Hello and good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Bear, and I'm an event facilitator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, and that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Innuit, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roosterteeth. We are gathered here tonight to celebrate the launch of Winnipeg Places and Spaces, the latest publication from the Winnipeg Architecture Foundation. Following the presentation from editor Susan Algie, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. And if you are one of those here in person today, make sure you raise your hand nice and high for me. And I'll come over to you with this microphone just to make sure that you're heard over on our live stream tonight. And then I will be back at the close of the event just to review signing procedure. For now, though, please join me in welcoming Winnipeg writer, researcher, and the executive director of the Winnipeg Architecture Foundation, Susan Algie.
Well, hello, everyone. And thanks so much for joining us on this wintry evening. I suggest that we all pretend that we're seated in comfy chairs by a roaring fire. The slides are going to circulate through, so I'm not going to speak directly to them, but it'll give you a chance to see a variety of pictures that are in the tour book. In 1996, 6 young people interested in architecture decided to form an organization. We named it the Winnipeg Architecture Foundation with the aspirational hope that, like the Chicago Architecture Foundation, it would grow over time. 3 of us were architects and 3 of us were architectural historians or just keen on the subject. And it just happens that 4 of us are here tonight. So you want to just raise your hands, guys? David Gale? Woo! You can tell it was a long time ago that we were the young people started. Our first project was a tour book called Terracotta Architecture Walking Tour. It was done by volunteers. Next, we undertook an inventory of buildings in the downtown that were from the 1945 to the 1975 period. And one of those people is in the audience tonight. Then we did an inventory of schools across Winnipeg. And then of religious structures of all types, all within that period of 1945 to 1975. That was really a preference on our part to look at post-war architecture, and there were other organizations that were dealing with earlier areas. Much of the work was done by volunteers, and then it was complemented by summer student grants. In 2011, I finished my paid employment with Parks Canada after 35 years, which allowed more time to work on a new website for the Winnipeg Architecture Foundation and to expand our programming. And I hope most of you have had an opportunity to visit our website at some point in time for research or to find out what events we have going on and so on. Since launching our Winnipeg Architecture.ca website in 2012, we have documented over 3,000 buildings. We have postings online about hundreds of architects, interior designers, planners, engineers, and landscape architects. And you'll also find many online exhibits, self-guided tours that you can take yourself. We've developed a growing archival collection with material donated by architects and their families. And we've also conducted oral history interviews over the last 20 years. All of this research is used to inform a wide range of public programs, including books, tours, talks, and exhibits. With everything, our aim is simply to educate the public about architecture, to celebrate this amazing city and its architecture that we have, and also to entertain and have fun while we're doing it. As Winnipeg reached its 150th year, it seemed an appropriate time to use this research for what is now our 23rd publication, Winnipeg Places and Spaces. This is the first comprehensive guide to the City of Winnipeg's buildings, landscapes, public art, and also landmarks. Many of us have a familiarity with the very well-known landmarks, such as the Manitoba Legislative Building or the Winnipeg Art Gallery. When visitors come to town, we might take them to the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, to the Forks, or Assiniboine Park. But what about Elmwood Cemetery? What about the innovative planning and the design of Silver Heights or Windsor Park? The great selection of modernist churches in Saint Vital, or Etienne Gabory's Blessed Sacrament Church in Transform. I'm standing here as one person, but obviously many people over the years have been involved in doing research and writing and delivering tours and doing archival work for us. Many of whom are volunteers, and so I just really like to acknowledge that it's been a very collaborative collection of bringing together a lot of information gathered over that time. Many researchers and writers have contributed over time to the collection, volunteers, some are students, and sometimes professionals funded with very small grants. As with all of our design work, Robin Shesternick of Burdock's Design created this attractive book with its unique dust chapter. And I'm just going to mention, and Robin happens to be in the audience, and those of you who have bought previous books from us, merchandise, website, etc., it's all been done by that one talented gal. So we've done an innovative dust jacket for this particular book. You'll get a map of the city on one side that lists all the sites, and then a kind of a more concentrated downtown core. And I hope I won't embarrass myself by not folding it correctly. For you young ones, this is a big map, and it's caused lots of anxiety in families as people tried to deal with them in the past. We have all of our publications printed at Friesens. This is the first time they've ever done something like this, so they were quite excited themselves to try it out. The chapter photographs that you'll find are by Lindsay Reed with contributions from several others. And I just wanted to note that Winnipeg is particularly lucky at this moment in time that we have 3 award-winning architectural photographers, all of whom happen to be young women. So it's nice to know that they're going to be doing it for a period of time going forward. And when I say award-winning, they have won many awards from the Canadian Architect magazine, and contributed to architectural projects that have won the Governor General's Award and so on. So we're really lucky to have them here. So a little tiny bit of history. The transformation of Winnipeg from a modest pioneer settlement to Western Canada's largest metropolitan centre in the early 1900s resulted in a concentration of early skyscrapers in one of the best remaining warehouse districts in North America. And for everyone, as you travel to the Exchange District, for instance, Exchange District National Historic Site, it's an amazing and unique collection in the country. Although most of the very early practicing architects in Winnipeg were from England, Chicago, or eastern cities such as Toronto, early in the 1900s, an architecture school was established at the University of Manitoba. And since then, there have been generations of architects, landscape architects, interior designers, planners, and engineers involved in the design of a very rich variety of buildings and landscapes across the city of Winnipeg. And each of these time periods of design have left a very rich legacy. And again, we're particularly fortunate in Winnipeg that we actually have buildings from all of those different periods. We did have a long stretch where we didn't quite have the same development pressures and so forth. And that might not have been good for the economy, but it meant that we had more of our historic buildings remained. It was not until the 1950s that the needs of the post-war generation prompted a new era of design and construction. This coincided with a social and economic climate in Winnipeg that was conducive to innovation. The University of Manitoba School of Architecture had a new director, John Russell, who was a graduate of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston, and had studied and worked with many of the most innovative architects in North America at that time. So he brought all of that to Winnipeg. Many of the architectural graduates from Manitoba decided to pursue graduate studies in Chicago, Boston, and New York. But in most cases, they all returned to Winnipeg to practice, and thus bringing with them some of those very new ideas. The city's architecture from that 1945 to 1975 period is largely the product of this strong modernist ethic at the Faculty of Architecture and the alumni who remained and practiced in the city. And those of you who have seen previous publications that we put out, Green Blankstein Russell, for instance, who designed City Hall, the Winnipeg Airport, Sherry said many, many buildings across Western Canada, along with LM Architectural Group, Number 10 Architectural Group. They all had principals or founders who had gone away, learned the modernist approach, but came back. And so that's why we got so many great examples still. Winnipeg was similar to most North American cities and experienced a major population boom in the 50s. And this led to the expansion of both religious and educational facilities during that period to meet increased demands. It resulted in an excellent collection of building designs that were both innovative and architecturally interesting. In more recent years, several award-winning and importantly sustainable buildings and landscapes have been designed by Winnipeg architects and landscape architects. And each year, many years ago, it used to be the Massey Awards that were given to celebrate architecture. Now it's the Governor General's Awards for Architecture. And practically every year, there are at least one or two Winnipeg firms winning awards. And if you think about how many firms are here versus in Ontario, Quebec, etc., they're still really doing a bang-up job. So we'll talk about the book for a minute. The book. It's pink, yes. The book is divided into 35 neighborhoods. So I just want to stress, it's the whole city. It's not just the tourist city or the Central Park, it's the whole city. So it's divided into 35 neighborhoods with almost 400 listings for places and spaces. And each of these are reflected on a neighborhood map. So some of them will come through the slides, but there's sections that are color-coded with the map, so you can find all of the spots. We didn't prescribe an exact route. It's more you can go to an area, you can wander, you can find the local coffee shop, etc., etc. There are short descriptions of the neighborhoods and their history to provide some context. Each listing in the book gives the address, the year of construction, the architect, if known, and a short description about the place and its history. If it piques your interest and you want more in-depth information, then people can consult our website, some of our other publications, or those of other great sources such as the Manitoba Historical Society. So we're going to give you a short taste, and then if you really want the whole cake or block of tofu or whatever, you can then go elsewhere to get more information. For Central Winnipeg, we have 5 chapters, and we divided it arbitrarily into north, south, east, and west. Please don't take exception if you feel that it should have been in the east or it should have been in the west. It's just an arbitrary thing to try to group them. Color tabs visually demarcate each neighborhood within the book. Each neighborhood section begins with a detailed map showing the locations of the places and spaces and this short introduction. As I mentioned, the book's dust jacket is removable and unfolds to reveal a map of the city. On one side of the map, as I mentioned, is the central part of Winnipeg, while the opposite side shows the entire city. The neighborhoods are identified in a large font, and all of the places and spaces in the book are indicated with a dot and a place name. Obviously, you're not necessarily going to be taking this map everywhere you go, but it's also pretty enough to put up on your wall or give as a gift. How do we decide what to include? You're probably wondering as you go through. We consulted with people who have undertaken research and writing for the Winnipeg Architecture Foundation over the years. As well, we walked and rode our bikes throughout the city, adding to the list. We contacted people in various neighborhoods for suggestions, community representatives, other people who do research, Christian Cassidy and so forth, to try to draw in as broad a range of sites as we could. We also we did a little online invitation for suggestions. And obviously there will be buildings that you think should have been included, or there might be others that you think should be excluded. It can be really challenging finding information on buildings, especially those that were built pre-internet. What do we use? Well, we use many things. We use building permits, newspaper articles, periodicals from the time. That can be really useful, even, you know, Canadian Home and Gardens, etc., reported on these buildings. Archival photographs and drawings are all used to build a history, but sometimes none of those can be located. As well, when we've done interviews with people, we have had the opportunity to ask several architects who designed these buildings about them. You can get some information, but it's always a detective hunt when trying to build the history of a building. While I've mentioned architects and other professions and their contributions to our city, it is important to note that the guidebook includes modest buildings as well as the monumental. And this was very, very important to us. A stroll along Regent Avenue in Transcona would reveal the former post office and the Archambault Performance Pavilion, designed by Dave Furman, who's here. Nearby is one of Etienne Gabory's finest churches, Blessed Sacrament. Much less well known than Precious Blood, but a beautiful, beautiful church if you have the opportunity to visit on a Sunday and see the interior. Very, very beautiful. And right next door is the modernist apartment building, the Kern Park Manor. So you can go for a little exploration in Transcona, and there's many, many wonderful buildings of all era there. In the Garden City Jefferson area, you could explore a neighborhood of French-style houses with clean lines, large windows, built-in functional details such as carports. You could wander along Dahlia, Buttercup, Crocus, and Astor Streets to explore why exactly it's called Garden City. And sort of a little side note, when Garden City was built, one of the provisions that the municipality at the time put on is that they had to plant a considerable number of trees, shrubs, etc., right from the get-go. So that was quite interesting. And I think, Susan, would a lot of them still be there?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And all the top lots, that was designated there too.
To service the Garden City community, several 1960s era schools, synagogues, churches, and libraries were built, most of which are still in use today. Really interesting part of the city to visit, and a great place if you're on your bike to go around the neighborhood. In the West End, Jacob Penner Park is still an important green space and recreational center. Developed in 1894 as one of the oldest parks in Winnipeg, and in the early 1900s, many Icelandic immigrants settled there and built quite substantial houses using the talents of Icelandic carpentry. The site also held Winnipeg's tree nursery from 1900 until 1920s, growing American elms. So many of the trees that have been planted along the boulevards throughout West End, Wolseley, River Heights, you name it, they all started at Jacob Penner Park. We do a tour there in the summer with Christian Cassidy, and it's I really recommend it. It also currently has a plaque which celebrates the Winnipeg Falcons, hockey team who won the Olympic gold medal in 1920. In the Seven Oaks neighborhood, you can discover that the 1963 Salisbury House on Main at Matheson and the 1952 Rosh Pina Synagogue in Matheson were both designed by architect Charles Fowler. Fowler worked for a long time with the Green Blankstein Russell firm, and then later went on to become a specialist in updating storefronts to make them more stylish. But I think the Salisbury House and just down the block, the synagogue, are like a perfect example of the modest to the monumental. The Salisbury House is still there, but it's been converted to it was sold as a different restaurant, but you can still go see the building. Berkshire Park and Nyack Park in San Vital were each designed by a single architect. Etienne Gabory designed a set of different building plans alternating throughout the Berkshire Park neighborhood, creating a sense of coherence and variety. The homes are all duplexes, each with their own garden. It's a fusion of privateness and sociability. And the use of overhangs and thin walls, recessed doors and windows, and exaggerated pitched roof lines were some of the ways that Gabory engaged with the prairie light. And that was a subject that was of great interest to him throughout his entire career. And if you've gone to any of the Gabory churches and the use of stained glass and where the light comes in, you'll appreciate that. So here he's done it in suburban housing successfully. Nyack Park, also in San Vital, was developed in the 1950s and it was designed by architect Nicholas Zunick. The homes display elements of the California ranch styles with an emphasis on the connection between interiors and outdoor spaces. These are just a few examples to show that it's not just the monumental museums, legislative building, the standard items that we would want you to go and explore. A visit to any of these places should provide you with some surprises and deliveries. Winnipeg is fortunate to have a wonderful legacy of buildings and landscapes from all of these time periods. Our hope is that Winnipeg Places and Spaces will help you to explore the city of Winnipeg on foot, on wheels, or even from a comfy chair. If the weather's not nice, you could be an armchair tourist. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions or comments? Ready for the pop quiz?
Are places like are places like Headingley also like are places like Headingley included?
No, we're within the boundaries of the city. We have a couple of places in the far-flung section, which would be St. Norbert Arts and Cultural Center, the Mint, which is not really in a neighborhood that had specifically other things, Fort White. But we don't go, for this, we don't go outside of the boundaries. There are many more places within the boundaries that we could have included, but the volume was getting rather large.
Thank you.
Susan?
Are each of the major parts discussed in the book?
Yes, yeah. So we have Kildonan Park, Assiniboine Park, San Vital Park, Central Park,
Vimy Ridge.
Vimy Ridge Park, yes, it's in the Wolseley section. Yeah, so we have most of the major parks included. We also have some landmarks, if you would, public art, etc., that are located, a few cairns, that sort of thing. And one of the things that was, as we went around, because we went to see all of the spots, my husband Jim and I, the cemeteries are quite amazing. And if you haven't been to Brookside Cemetery, Elmwood Cemetery, the cemetery at St. John's, it's the Jewish cemetery, Sherry Zedek Cemetery. It's quite a wonderful experience to walk through, and you can also see over time the changing materials, you know, the monumentality. Some of them are big, some of them are small. I think going to Brookside was particularly interesting for me, and that's part of the idea of the book. It's people tend to know where they live, they know their neighborhood, they know their route to work or school or church or whatever, and they might know the route to Costco or, you know, somewhere else, but they don't always tend to go a bit farther afield. And this is the idea of it. So, you know, you kind of head up Main Street, you go to Modern Coffee, or you can discover these places that are scattered through the city. And, you know, while you're there looking at buildings, you can also be buying the food from the little store or whatever.
What's your favorite structure in Winnipeg?
Well, that's a really good one. I have many favorites, but one would be the Royal Manitoba Theatre Center. That's got to be right up there. I think the clinic, because it is so, the Winnipeg Clinic, because it is so fun and unique and everything else. The Workman's Compensation Building, 333 Broadway. You can tell these are all in the modern era. But there's also, we have somebody who's doing work on John Diageo, an architect who designed 200 buildings in Winnipeg. And up Main or Henderson, I always mix them up. Up Main Street at Bannerman, there's thank you, y'all. You can tell who's doing the research on John Diageo. At Main or Bannerman, there's a building that is so well designed. And it was originally a bank, but now it's an office facility for an organization. But it's such a refined building. You could see that building in any major city across the country. And, you know, it's nearby neighbors now or box stores or whatever, but the building is still there. It's beautiful, as is so many of the buildings in that area. So I think it's just to get you out to see, you know, to go to Scotia Drive if you live in River Heights or whatever, to go exploring. Unfortunately, now there's a lot of these routes that, should you ride a bike, you can actually get to easily on bike trails and so forth, which is a kind of a nice bonus.
I know a lot of major cities like Minneapolis and Chicago often are known for their architecture, and they offer tours and so forth. Does Winnipeg do anything along that line?
Sure, we certainly do. For quite a long time, we've offered tours, predominantly in the summer months, sometimes in the winter. So we offer tours practically every summer, or every week in the summertime on different subjects. We've done it on terracotta, on Portage and Main, on we did one last summer on apartment living on Osborne. So we try to mix it up, and when we have the opportunity to go inside buildings and see with the architect or whatever, we do that too. On our website, you can sign up for a newsletter that comes out every 6 weeks or so, and it'll tell you about, we do talks. We do an annual architecture and design film festival. This year it'll be the 9th to the 13th of April, and that's in several locations. So there's a lot of tours to be had.
But do you advertise outside the city, province?
Well, it's all on our website. So people have come to our film festival from Ottawa and Toronto, and yeah, so everything's on the website and under events, and people can plan and come. We're a very small, predominantly volunteer organization, so we do what we can, but we mostly do it within the confines of Winnipeg.
Well, you should get tours in Winnipeg.
Well, that would be great, wouldn't it? Everybody can send an email. Any other questions? Anybody? Any comments? Nothing? Have you been able to see the pictures okay? It's a bit light, I know, but okay, I guess we're done. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for coming.
Were there any further closing comments from yourself before we end the night? Any further closing comments from yourself before we end the night?
I just want to say, I think it's I Love to Read month. And it's also time to shop local.
So next is, we're now moving along to the signing portion of the night. So feel free to approach the signing desk over at the right side there. You don't have to pay for a book right away. You can get it signed first. Just please make sure you visit the cash desk before you leave. That would be great. And thank you once again to all of you for joining us, to the Winnipeg Architecture Foundation, and of course to Susan Algie. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Yeah.